What happens if you don't have any money and you can't make any money because you're taking care of a simpleton? This is Bookie, and today we'll be talking about Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, and we'll be answering the question, should you read it? The video will be spoiler-free, so let's hear what it's about.
We find two men employed in rural California. We meet George, who's a streetwise caretaker, but he's like good-hearted, but rough around the edges. And we find Lenny, a man who's built like an ox, but with a brain made of rocks. We follow them in their journey to find enough money for their own little ranch, and we see them employed on a farm, seeing that they were forced out of their previous employment. And we sort of follow what happens when they're in their new employment, and what happens when Lenny's tendencies catch up to him and stuff occurs.
I found that one of the themes in this book was responsibility. In fact, for George has to tend to Lenny because Lenny is a dumb-witted person, and for Lenny wants to tend the rabbits, but to do that he has to behave like a responsible person.
I found the second theme to be powerlessness, in the sense that George is powerless because he has to care for Lenny, and Lenny gets into trouble all the time. Lenny is strong as an ox, but he is mentally disabled. We have Candy, who is an old man with a stump as hand and an old dog. We have Crooks, who is powerless in the sense that he is of Afro-American descent. And we have the ranch workers, who are all powerless in the sense that they are poor. And if their low means of money means also it drives the story forward in the sense that Lenny and George move to the farm to get money.
Of Mice and Men is a great short book, and if you can handle sadness, I think this is a story that will last with anyone above the age of 17. Steinbeck can be a little bit slow to get into, but I got myself fully absorbed in the second half of the story, which is rare for me. The only nitpicks would be that I'd forgotten most of the side characters from my first time reading, and I mean, it's no grapes of wrath. Still, I rate my enjoyment of this book a 9 out of 10. Definitely sit down to read this.
The story is short and readable. It has plot, it has interesting characters, tension, foreshadowing. I would not advise against reading the book. However, because of its shortness, I was not that emotionally invested in the main characters or what happened to them. I would give the novel a 7 out of 10.
With an almost poetic description of the environments and a compelling story about two men and their way to get their money, I think that this story of Mice and Men by Steinbeck is a 9 out of 10.
Of Mice and Men is an extremely compelling read. Though it seems somewhat slow at first, the compelling characters drive the story to an absurdly gripping conclusion. Steinbeck is just an artisan at portraying human suffering, and the book is filled with his voice and his very specific eye for human pathos. Though it's maybe not as thought-provoking as Grapes of Wrath, the lack of pastoral scenes when compared, combined with the fact that Steinbeck maintains a strong humanity in this book and focus on characters, means that I would rate this book very highly. It's a 10 out of 10 for me, and this book is just sublime.
So apparently you should definitely read this book. If you have read it, you can join our discussion in the podcast video here. And otherwise, we'll hopefully see you next month when we'll be talking about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. Please hit that subscribe button so you can see it pop up. And we will see you then, or we will see you soon.